Because you've always been sort of the leading edge of where media is going with Politico, now with Axios. You understand the environment so well. How do Democrats, and frankly, how does legacy media need to change the way it thinks about getting information? I mean, a lot of the voters who went out and voted for Donald Trump, that so many people are wondering what happened here, they're not watching, frankly, this show. They're not reading the New York Times. They're not consuming media that way. And the Trump campaign found those voters where they live. So how do Democrats need to change the way they communicate to voters, if you think that's part of the problem?
For sure. I mean, I think all of us have to come to grips with legacy media is just not as important as it thinks it is. It is to you, it is to me. That's a relatively small group of people who rely on us for their information. And you have to go into the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. And basically, the way people get information is shattered into 20, 30 different pieces. And so if you just look empirically at the numbers, Joe Rogan's more important than any of us. He just has a much bigger, hyper-connected audience that listens to his every word. So maybe listen to Joe Rogan and kind of understand, like, what is he talking about? What are the guests that he has on? What are the issues that they care about? Realize that the gravity of right-wing discourse is now taking place on X. It's not Fox. X is what matters. Elon Musk is now, I wrote about this yesterday, arguably the most powerful civilian in the history of the country. He controls information flow. He controls multiple businesses. He has the president's ear. He's going to be in charge of some newfangled organization to gut government spending. We've not seen a person with that kind of clout across those sectors. But where his real power comes from is X. People thought he was an idiot when he bought X because he lost a lot of money. He's got a lot of money. And now he happens to have the most powerful platform on the right. And politics is downstream from information. And there's just a whole new information ecosystem out there. So for us, for you, for Democrats, for Republicans, you have to understand.
Take a look at those faces, gang. Look at them. That's as this guy is, Frank Bruni is talking. Take a look at those faces. What are they realizing? Those woke legacy media elites are suddenly realizing for the very first time that their liberal cosmopolitan world has imploded. That's it. That's the moment. They're finally realizing what we've known for years on this channel, that a new era, a new world, a new conservative age is rising. And their world, their liberal, globalist, corrupt, managerial world is coming to a colossal and decisive end. And we are all here to witness and celebrate it all together. 3 words. What a week. What a historic, epic, world-changing week we have all lived through together. In many ways, there'll never be another week quite like this one. I mean, make no mistake, this is just the beginning. I hope to show you that throughout this video today. This is just the beginning of a new conservative age rising in our midst all over the world. It's already been going on. It's what I've been trying to convince you guys for the last 8 years. But what Trump did, what he accomplished, what the MAGA movement accomplished is by far greater than anything we have seen in modern political history. We just saw a candidate for the first time since FDR win 3 historic elections in a row in record numbers. This is just the beginning of a political realignment that will change our nation for generations. But this week was special. It marked the decisive breakthrough of this new conservative age, when the political paradigm shift that we've been tracking and talking about now for 8 years finally broke the woke liberal left-wing globalist defenses. And now they are scattered in a total and complete retreat. I'm just thinking of that scripture passage, let God arise and let his enemies be scattered. As I shared with all of you last week in our last live stream Friday, This channel started on November 1st, 2016. We had actually last week was our 8th birthday. And I started this channel to really just kind of keep daily updates on the scholarship that I discovered years ago when I was doing my PhD research. That noticed that we were witnessing the first real signs that something new and utterly epic was happening in our world. For these last 8 years, I've been making a very simple but consistent argument. The world is going through a massive paradigm shift, a tectonic paradigm shift, a shift, the biggest shift we've seen in 300 years. We are moving out of a modern liberal globalist world, and we are moving into a postmodern conservative civilizationalist world. More and more populations all across the globe were rising up and revolting against a globalist, one-size-fits-all managerial class that sought to impose its one-size-fits-all dictatorial rules on all the populations of the earth. This managerial class cared nothing about borders, cared nothing about national sovereignty. It cared nothing about keeping manufacturing and industrial jobs and economic sovereignty at home. It despised and maligned our religious faiths, our cultures, our customs, our traditions. They literally sought to own everything and turn us into renters and serfs. They impose mandates on our lives and our bodies and threaten us with permanent social expulsion if we publicly affirm basic biological truths. They repeatedly told us that our concerns about the border were rooted in our racism, xenophobia, and bigotry. They told us that our concerns about inflation were rooted in disinformation. They told us that our fears about jobs and the economy were rooted in ignorance. They told us about our concerns about fairness in female sports were unfounded at best and phobic at worst. They told us that our fears about rising violent crime were naive and stupid. And they told us that our support of the one presidential candidate who shared all of these concerns with us made us threats to democracy, or in a single word, garbage. But instead of being intimidated by that, instead of cowering and accepting that rule, you rose up. You. It first happened back in 2016, particularly in June of that year, when more Brits voted to leave the European Union than had ever voted for a candidate or party in Britain's electoral history. And just a few months later, tens of millions rose up and voted overwhelmingly for a candidate that promised to do for America what the Brexit referendum did for the UK: emancipate us, liberate us from globalist rule. But as we saw, immediately, the globalist powers that be gathered together, both billionaire and bureaucrat, to thwart both Brexit as well as this new president. A hostile 24/7 negative media, the Russian collusion hoax, investigations, backstabbing neocons, national security agencies spying, 2 impeachments, and eventually the formation of what was in effect a legacy media-driven coup that replaced him with a senile, demented old man campaigning from his basement 20 minutes away from here, voted for by millions of voters who have since vanished into thin air. They thought they could finally ruin him by raiding his home, swamping him with a myriad of indictments, charging him with dozens of felonies, fining him hundreds of millions of dollars, convicting him in kangaroo courts, humiliating him with mugshots, kicking him off ballots, and then, of course, the most horrifying moment of all, when a gunman almost took his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. But astonishingly, miraculously, to the utter horror of the globalist powers that be, their worst nightmare, a nightmare they couldn't even ever remotely bring themselves to imagine, came true. President Trump, no matter what they did to him, kept coming back. He kept rising. And he not only kept coming back, he not only kept rising, he rose stronger than ever. And the ultimate reason why he kept coming back stronger than ever, like that beautiful picture shows, is because of you. You helped him to his feet. You refused to back down. You refused to turn away and flee. Even when all of our feckless Republican leadership, particularly those cowards in the Senate, were telling us to do just that. Forget about it. It's time to move on. No. You all stood your ground. You raised your fists right along with him, and you fought. And as a result of that faithfulness, as a result of that courage, as a result of that standing your ground, rising and fighting, we have together just witnessed the single greatest political triumph in American history. Trump's triumph this past Tuesday, as I'll show you in this video, Trump's triumph was his greatest triumph ever. This far surpassed anything he did in 2016 or 2020. It even surpasses what Obama did back in 2008. This was an election victory unlike anything we have seen before. And it's ultimately because we stood together. By God's grace, we stood our ground. We fought. And we won. Those globalist powers that be are right now, as we speak, in full and panicked retreat. And we're seeing the implosion everywhere. Remember that caravan of migrants headed to our southern border? Did you hear about that? It's officially done. The latest reports are that the 3,000 person caravan that started in southern Mexico has basically dissipated as word spread that Trump was going to have them immediately arrested and deported when he got in. In other words, any hope that Trump's plans of mass deportation would be thwarted or held up in the courts was dashed. Those Jack Smith cases against Trump, dead. Over. The lawfare is officially done, and it failed in every way imaginable. Jack Smith's name will soon be forgotten forever. He probably won't even be anywhere near D.C. when Trump is inaugurated. Even that corrupt Manhattan court presided over by that idiot Judge Merchan is going to toss the whole thing out eventually. Doesn't even matter what he does. He's the most irrelevant peon on the planet right now. Oh, and Trump's team has a rather explicit message for New York Attorney General Letitia James. Check this out.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term, because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights. And I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights. It's not going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike, this isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote. Don't try the funny business, because we know the team this time and they are not effing around.
That, my friends, is what the breathing of the fresh air of freedom sounds like. Oh, yeah, Letitia James, try it and we will throw your fat ass in jail. That's what's taking our nation back sounds like. And we could go on and on. Steve Madden, the $3 billion shoe company, just announced that they were pulling out their manufacturing plant in China to avoid Trump's tariffs. They're bringing the manufacturing jobs back home. The Dow rose 1,500 points on Wednesday in response to Trump's decisive win. Bitcoin surged in value since Trump pledged to make America the Bitcoin capital of the world. Russian President Vladimir Putin not only congratulated Trump, but announced that he was now ready to negotiate peace terms with Ukraine. You cannot make this stuff up. Did you see this? If we have the video, Polish parliament is cheering and chanting Trump's name. Representative Thomas Massey, who will most likely have a cabinet position in Trump's administration, is already telling the FBI to start packing their bags. They're going to be completely overhauling all the three-letter national security agencies. We could go on and on. In fact, Mayor Eric Adams of New York City, freaking Mayor Eric Adams, who's gotten indicted, as you know, after he challenged Biden and his open borders. Well, he just announced that they will no longer be giving money and vouchers to migrants. That program, that very controversial program where they were basically paying people to break the law, is now officially over. You think Eric Adams is the next Democrat to join the realignment of normies around the nation? But perhaps the single biggest loser of them all this week, as we circle back Psaki, is the enemy of the American people, the legacy media itself. And that is the biggest prize of them all.